Why Rafael Fiziev will out-duel Justin Gaethje.
All my life, it's fights. All what I know, it's just how to make money with my hands. My last fight against Gaethje, I'm not following my plans. I don't control also my emotions.
This Fiziev is something different because the guy is everything that he is advertised to be. He is a phenomenal striker. He has fantastic takedown defense and is confident in what makes him very special in this weight class.
I have only respect for Justin. I know he have a long career, but for me, this is like, wow, this is challenge. And I like challenges.
For me to end my UFC career completely satisfied, I would need to know that I no longer have the capability to be the best in the world.
No matter who gets locked in that octagon with me is in for the fight of their life.
There is no fighter in the world of sports that is more excited than Justin Gaethje. You'll find nobody more exciting and better.
I was born and I was bred and I was raised to do this. I just love it way too much.
After Dan Hooker had to pull out with a broken hand, Fiziev vs Gaethje has been set for the co-main event at UFC 313. And although a lot of fans are riding with Justin Gaethje, especially considering he won their first matchup, I'm here to tell you that Fiziev will out-duel Justin Gaethje. But quickly, before we get the video started, for those of you who may not know, I'm JuicyMMA. I make opinionative MMA content, and if you guys enjoy videos similar to this, hit that subscribe button, that like button, and that post notification bell. But anyways, let's get into it. Ever since making it to the UFC, Rafael Fiziev has been one of the more impressive up-and-comers we have in the entire company. When you look at some of the fighters that Fiziev was able to beat, it's a pretty impressive list, as he was able to beat Rafael dos Anjos, Brad Riddell, Bobby Green, Renato Moicano, Mark Jerkesi, and others. And throughout that win streak that Fiziev was building for himself, he was able to get a lot of TKO and KO finishes over a lot of those guys I just mentioned. So based upon the impressive performances that Fiziev was putting up in the UFC decided to give him his biggest test yet in Justin Gaethje. And that fight ended up being extremely close. Fiziev was doing the better work early, Gaethje was doing the better work late, but at the end of the day, the official decision ended up going to Justin Gaethje via majority decision. Now, obviously there were some people that thought Fiziev won the fight, there were some people that thought Gaethje won the fight, but in my opinion, it was still a win for Rafael Fiziev. Because even though he didn't get the win officially on the scorecards, at the end of the day, he proved that he's on the top level of 155 pounds. Obviously at that point, and still currently at this point, Fiziev is still very young, and if he's proving already that he's at the top tier of 155 pounds, just imagine how much better this guy can get in the future. But unfortunately for Fiziev, after that Justin Gaethje loss, things started to go downhill, and they went downhill quickly. As in his next fight against Mateusz Gamrot, he ended up losing via technical TKO. And I say technical TKO because Fiziev ended up blowing out his knee and wasn't able to continue from there. And obviously whenever you talk about a significant injury, it's always unfortunate. But when you go back and watch that fight between Fiziev and Gamrot, although it was short, it's even more unfortunate because Fiziev was on fire. He was landing combinations at will, he was stopping a lot of the takedowns that Gamrot was going for, and for the most part, it seemed like Fiziev was cruising his way to a decision or possibly even later TKO victory over Gamrot. But unfortunately for Fiziev, the injury did happen, and that's the last time we saw him until this upcoming weekend where we have him going up against Justin Gaethje in the co-main event, which is going to be a 3-round fight. But a question that some of you may be wondering at this point is, how has Rafael Fiziev been able to have so much success in the UFC thus far? Well, in my opinion, I think it comes down to a couple different factors, but the first factor I want to touch upon is his striking. Because when you watch Fiziev strike out there, it's essentially like watching art. Fiziev does a great job at staying technical in essentially all of the shots that he throws. In terms of his boxing, Fiziev does his best work on the inside, as once he's on the inside, Fiziev's able to land nice uppercuts, nice hooks, and even at times nice elbows as well. But the great thing about Rafael's striking game is he's not just an inside fighter, he's also able to fight at range, and he's able to do so at a very effective level. As when Fiziev is at range, he at times utilizes his jab, but mostly what he does is utilize his kicks. Fiziev has a great ability to throw kicks to the legs, body, as well as the head. And we've seen a bunch of times, both on the inside and the outside, Fiziev was able to land devastating head kicks on his opponents, knocking them out from there. So overall, when you talk about Fiziev's striking game, obviously there is a lot of skill, as he does have tremendous boxing on the inside, he does have tremendous kicks on the outside, but really what puts everything together in my opinion is a speed that he throws his shots with. As when you watch Fiziev out there, it's pretty clear in most of his fights he's essentially double the speed of his opponent. We especially saw that in the first Gaethje fight, we saw that in a bunch of other performances that Fiziev has had, and I think that speed is really a huge advantage for him. But outside of Fiziev's striking game, he also has a tremendous ability to stop takedowns. Now obviously in this fight versus Gaethje, I doubt this is going to be a huge factor, but when you talk about some of the other fights that Fiziev was in, that takedown defense was extremely important to keep the fight on the feet and keep Fiziev in a position where he's comfortable in. But another question that some of you may be wondering at this point is, why do I think Rafael Fiziev is going to outduel Justin Gaethje? Well, in my opinion, it comes down to a couple different factors, but the first factor I want to touch upon is Justin Gaethje himself. Because when you talk about Gaethje, yes, he was able to have a lot of success in the UFC, yes, he was able to beat Fiziev in their first fight, but when you look throughout Gaethje's career, one thing that was prevalent essentially in every one of his fights is damage. Gaethje probably takes more damage than anybody else in the UFC. And although he has shown a pretty great chin up until this point, eventually that damage catches up to anybody, and especially considering in his last fight, he did get knocked out cold by Max Holloway, of course that doesn't help. So basically the point that I'm trying to make is I think there's a very real possibility that we may see a Justin Gaethje out there with a far worse chin that he's had in the past. And if that were to be the case, that would be a huge advantage for Fiziev, as he would be able to hurt him and possibly even finish him from there. But the next factor that I want to touch upon for why I think Fiziev is going to outduel Justin Gaethje is something that I touched upon before, but that's the speed of Rafael Fiziev. Because as I touched upon before, when you watch their first fight back, Fiziev, especially in that first round and some of the second round, was significantly faster than Gaethje. He was giving a lot of problems to him, he was able to land a lot of shots and get out of the way of counter shots, and overall I do think that's going to play a huge factor in the second fight between the two men. As also that first fight was 2 years ago, and Gaethje is a little bit older in MMA at this point, so there is a very real possibility that he may be even slower in this fight than he was the first time they fought. So I definitely do think the speed is going to be a huge factor, especially early, and if Fiziev is able to show a better gas tank, maybe even late as well. Now the next reason for why I think Rafael Fiziev is going to outduel Justin Gaethje is due to Gaethje's last loss versus Max Holloway. Because in that fight he got knocked out cold, and whenever you talk about a guy who's traditionally had a great chin and they take a bad knockout like that, in their next fight not only could their chin be worse, but also psychologically they may be a little bit more reserved in that next fight, and especially when you talk about a guy like Justin Gaethje who has all the success by throwing himself in the fire, that could be problematic. Because when you look around the UFC and you talk about some guys that have had great chins and had those chins cracked, you talk about a guy like Kamaru Usman in more recent memory against Leon Edwards, in their third fight between the two, it was very clear that Usman was a lot more reserved out there. His chin was still there, he actually did take some big shots and was able to eat them, but regardless, psychologically he was a lot more reserved in that fight than he traditionally was in the past, and I think we could see a very similar thing for his teammate in Justin Gaethje in this one. And if Gaethje is forced to fight reserved, I think he's going to be significantly less effective. Now will this end up happening in the fight? Of course we don't know, we have to see how Gaethje comes out there, but after taking a bad knockout loss in his last fight, it's at the very least a possibility. But overall, if I had to give my official prediction for this matchup, I'm definitely going with Rafael Fiziev via decision. I definitely think there is a chance Fiziev may be able to find a TKO or KO finish over Gaethje, but for the most part I do think this is going to be a relatively close back and forth battle. I think it's going to be a war. I think both guys are going to land good shots on each other, but at the end of the day, based on speed, based on youth, and based on damage that Gaethje has accrued over his entire career, I definitely am leaning with Rafael Fiziev. But anyways, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you think Rafael Fiziev is going to beat Justin Gaethje, or do you not think so? But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did enjoy, check one of these two videos popping up now, and until the next time, peace out guys.